Okay, hi everybody. Today is Wednesday, January 23rd, and you are at the bi-weekly WG K8s Infra, K8s Infra working group meeting. I think it's the inaugural meeting where we're actually officially a working group now. Hooray! Paperwork is fun. So keep in mind that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to a publicly accessible YouTube channel. So everything that you say will be archived in stone for all eternity, and you should obey our code of conduct, which basically boils down to don't be a jerk. So before we get through to the rest of the agenda in terms of action items or follow-ups or anything like that, I just wanted to take a moment to celebrate the fact that I believe we have our first piece of community infrastructure running. So thank you so much to Tim and Hippie, and am I leaving out anybody on this call for like actually pushing forward on that?
Brendan too, yeah.
And Brendan, yes. So yay, thanks everybody. Tim sent out an email to KDev to like zero fanfare whatsoever. So I tried to remind everybody that you don't have to use Thocken as a service for DNS changes anymore. And now I think somebody owes us a t-shirt. So motivated partially by that fact, I opened up a pull request about maybe double checking the owners and security contacts we have in the K8s.io repo just to see if they're still sort of relevant. I forgot to put a hold on it, so Tim was a little eager to maybe get himself out of the root owners file. So the changes I made to the owners file were by no means an attempt to grab power or voluntold anybody into doing things. It was more an attempt to formalize the fact that the working group seems to be doing a bunch of stuff with this repo. So the DIMS and I will be owners at the root. This is a SIG contributor experience and sub-project. The repo is, so I feel like the tech leads from SIG contribx should be owners at the root, and then the idea is to actually push all the real power into owners files that are in subdirectories. So since the DNS related subdirectory can be managed by the community, there are a bunch of community people in there. Since the other two subdirectories currently relate to infrastructure that's deployed on Google hardware, I have Thocken and Jeff Grafton listed there, kind of to motivate you to get yourselves out of there by turning those things into stuff that the community can manage. If I have done bad, please comment on that PR, and I'm happy to revert whatever. I went and talked to the other individuals that I dropped, and they're okay with it. Okay, that was kind of my biggest piece. I will hand over to Dims to walk us through the rest of the agenda, if that's cool.
Okay, let's do this the way it is in the doc. Hans, do you want to talk a little bit about the packaging cap you proposed and the feedback that you've gotten so far?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. So I created this cap. Basically, it was inspired by an issue from Tim St. Clair and tried to understand all the bits and pieces in general of the whole packaging stuff, from creating packages to publishing that. This cap specifically is only talking about the tooling and stuff related to creating the packages. It is right now not talking about how to publish that into which repos or buckets or whatever. But it came up quite often that this is more or less the more important part, it seems, the publishing part. And the publishing part is actually the thing this working group is probably most interested in. I don't think the working group is that interested in creating the packages. So anyway, first off, I'd like to get as much comments and review on the cap itself, and I maybe want to have your opinion on, should this be one cap for the whole process, meaning also handling the publishing part and whatever is involved there, creating the buckets and whatnot, or should we keep it separate for now? Maybe one additional thing, I have a meeting in half an hour or so with some people who are currently doing the publishing part. Right now, I don't have much of insight what's going on there and how this could be solved, but that's what I'm trying to discover right now. And my plan is to, if I have an overview about that, to create another CAP which handles the publishing part. Or if people prefer, fold that into the current CAP.
So I apologize for being late in doing this, but I captured some of the thoughts on publishing that Justin Santa Barbara and I had at KubeCon into a PR that I actually literally, you can still smell the fresh ink in the K8s.io repo. So that gives a sketch about what we were thinking about in terms of image promotion and stuff like that. So take a look at that. Honestly, a KEP feels like overkill on this stuff to me, and I don't know. I mean, I'm like the anti-bureaucracy person.
So I'll take the opposite position as somebody who used to say that KEPs were overkill. The consistency of having future work in KEPs is so much nicer in terms of cognitive burden of what's done and what's not done. Like I saw your doc, Brendan, and the doc itself is good, but it's all future tense, which means to me, I really want to see it in a KEP, even though through 2/3 of the KEP doesn't apply. I think KEP is the right place for it. Somebody argue with me.
I agree. What I'm trying to do is push us as a community to use the word KEP instead of design proposal as like a single document where we can track the why not, the how not these, the why not these other ways, and then like the plan going forward.
I mean, I don't super care, but oh my God, the bureaucracy. It's just like a startup, right? I mean, I don't know. It just seems like this stuff slows everybody down. But I hear your point, Tim. So.
Take the doc and paste it into a KEP and fill in a couple of the default fields, and it's done. At least, but I have special tracking in my mailbox for KEPs, so it makes it easier for me to keep track of future tense stuff.
In a different repo, in a different focus area. I mean, like this is just all about. It just adds cognitive overload to actually getting the damn thing submitted, but I will do it.
We made a decision at some point to put all KEPs in one repo, and like we just have to live with that, or re-adjudicate it. But this is not the right group.
No. I'm not suggesting that.
Yeah, Brendan, there's a problem. Why we ended up in this situation, right? So the problem was that there were at least 10 issues across 3 repositories where people were talking about. This is not there, that is not there, this is not working fine, and there are duplicates here and there. So Hans actually went through all those issues and tried to come up with something that will at least say something about each of those issues and how we should move forward from where we are today. And if you're not able to do that, then we can't move forward. Essentially, that's the problem. And not everybody knows all the specific issues, and have gone through them. That is why I think this is an important step at this point.
Oh yeah, no, I don't mean to denigrate any existing KEPs. I just meant, anyway, we've probably wasted more time talking about this than it would take me to cut and paste the KEP. So I'm going to shut up.
So should we expect
I don't
issue from you, Brandon?
Sure. Like I don't actually super care whether we fold this into one KEP or we have 2 KEPs. Like I don't know what. I defer to other people's judgment on that.
And then another thing, as I'm reading your text, I don't know if you're aware there's a KEP out there to do container image promotion.
Right. Yeah. I cited it down at the bottom. Right. Like the tool is there.
Okay. The tool, not the KEP on how it's getting rolled out, though, right?
That's a fair question. Then, if we're going to do KEPs on each individual piece, and at least the promoter certainly deserves a KEP, should this instead just be a KEP covering the artifact storage, redirection, etc., and say for container images, please see this other KEP instead?
Yeah, and that's effectively what the doc says. I mean, and that's my goal. Is it's basically to the extent that there's something there, it's like there's going to be a YAML file. Like I think this KEP has to say there's a YAML file that's checked into K8s.io somewhere, And that drives whatever promotion process we build, be it for images or artifacts. And then everything else in the KEP is about the redirection.
I agree. So, Brendan, so the KEP from Hans, if I remember right, is just deb and RPMs at this point. So yes, we need to deal with container and images separately, and there are a few other things that are happening there, right? So we can loop all that work into a KEP.
Okay, so I will separate. I mean, effectively, what I see this KEP as being is the combination of mirroring infrastructure, not even mirroring infrastructure, just the redirection part of the mirroring infrastructure, the vanity URL part, and the fact that the overall flow that we expect, similar to DNS, is there'll be a YAML file checked into K8s.io somewhere, and that's how you promote stuff. Whether it's an RPM, whether it's a bucket, whether it's an image, doesn't matter. And we can use different tools for all of those, but that's the basic flow.
Right, and as we get more details about how that will actually work, or what the options are for how to make the redirection work, whether we want multiple clusters serving the redirector, those sorts of issues, I think that's a great accumulation point for the details.
Sure. So I think, Hans, the feedback here is let's keep in the scope of what you're doing to just this one. If we try to boil the ocean, then we're going to get way more sidetracked. So let's stick to the one thing that we need to deal with this KEP itself is currently the people who cut the deb and RPMs, they push the debs and RPMs to a specific a GCS repository. We need to figure out which one that is and see if we can make just figure out how it's laid out and see if we can add things for nightly as well as beta artifacts in addition to the existing ones. So, and that's the minimum that I want. Plus some consensus about the signing certificate that they use. For deb artifacts, I believe you can create the deb artifacts first and then sign them. But for RPM, you need the signing certificate on the desktop of the person who's creating the RPMs. So that is another quirk that we need to look into. So if we do those two things in this KEP, I'll be happy.
I think that raises another thing that we raised before that I'll file into an issue, which is I think we need a secret store as part of K8s.io, as a part of our infra.
Right. So, one thing that Nikita and Stefan have been doing for the publishing bot is using Git crypt, and that seems to be working fine. So the way the Git crypt stuff works is they just added me as my GPG key into the publishing bot repository, and and then I was able to use the token. So basically, what we would do here is the release manager who needs the deb and the RPM signing key, we would add their GPG key to the K8s.io repository, and then they would be able to use the key. And when we switch from one release manager to another release manager, we'll drop the old one and add the new one, something like that. That would be the easiest way to go.
I feel like one sort of choke point for this stuff is better. So one set of IAM, in a cloud storage, in a cloud secret store is better than multiple different sources of IAM, but I don't really care. That's for another debate, I guess, a later date.
Right. I'm going from the learning that we already did in publishing bot, but if there is if somebody has some other way to do it, then we can follow that too.
I just wanted to say, thank you to Brendan and Hans for doing those docs. I do hope that technically we come up with the same solution at the end for all three, even though they might look different on the surface, and with minor modifications for signing versus Docker or whatever it is. And I also hope that signing is not controlled by an individual, that you never see the key. That would be, I have one of those keys, and it makes me uncomfortable to have that key.
Understood, Justin. Exactly. So in the OpenStack infrastructure, the way we did that was there's a YAML file, and you put in a SHA, and then the bot goes in, takes the key from some place which is not accessible by any individuals, except for the admins, of course, the root admins of the box. So, and then it actually does the signing and publishes the images. So we'll get there, but this is like the first step to that process. And I don't want to lay down the whole path because I don't know what all changes will come in the future. So let's start with at least giving some way to replicate what we are doing today in a public way, and then go on from there. Yeah, agree, Aaron. I'll try to write it down at least the initial steps. Hans, do you have enough to go by?
Yeah, sure. So correct me if I heard something wrong, but what I've heard is let's keep the cap as it is and hash out the details there. Figure out what's the current state in regards to publishing and all the other part, and create probably initial cap there when I have some overview, or check on Brendan's stuff, and yeah, let's see how that goes.
Okay. Yeah. So in your cap, the two things to add. One was the GCS data store and how it is laid out. I think it's
that's what I meant. What I wanted to keep for the other cap, the layout and the publishing.
Okay.
If you see what I mean.
Okay.
One thing I want to check for this cap now is the signing of the RPMs. As you said, that needs to be basically done when the RPMs are built.
That's right.
I need to check on that, but yeah, I will do so.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk to Caleb or Sumi. You have a meeting scheduled, right? So yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Anything else from anybody else on this topic? Yes, Aaron.
I just wanted to get feedback from Tim St. Clair before you and Hannes drop off to go talk about DEBs and RPMs. Does this cap look sufficient? I'm pinging Tim because he and I have had chats about SIG cluster lifecycle being highly motivated to do Debian and RPM packaging. Does this look like it'll work?
It seems fine. It's the same. We wrote down everything in the issue that we really wanted, at least from a packaging perspective. There's two parts. There's packaging and publishing, right? From a packaging perspective, we know exactly what we want. We wrote it all down. From a publishing perspective, that means it's a handoff. And that part is, I don't know if I'm ever going to get what I want. But from a packaging perspective, I think everything is written down. It's fine. I don't think we even needed a cap for it because it's not ambiguous, but I'm happy to see it written up. So I'm fine. I haven't been around for the last week because I've been offsite. So I'm trying to spin back into things. So I took a look at the cap. I'm like, sounds good. That's great. Glad he wrote it up. I think the hard part will be publishing and signing.
Okay, yes, and my other ask was make sure the meeting's recorded somehow. If you need somebody with like the SIG release Zoom credentials, I can go get somebody to help you out there.
Aaron, who was it addressed to? Hans?
Hans, Tim, whoever's going to that meeting.
Okay.
I don't know if the meeting's going to be recorded or not. If you show up and you find out that it's not, ping me and I'll get somebody.
I will make sure that it's recorded in some form.
Yeah. Hans, I'm optional on it, but I'll try to join later. Okay, so let's go to the next one. There is a request from, okay, the way this started was somebody needed access, was it Hippie Hacker who needed access to the Kubernetes charts information. And then it turned into B. Iglesias requesting the GCP project for the Kubernetes charts to whether they should go into CNCF. Ihor, how does this work? Ihor, are you there?
I'm here. So can I hear more details? Like, I'm not sure about the what specifically week is requested. So Vic, if you can provide more details.
Absolutely.
We can figure out how can do it.
Yeah, what does this report do currently, and who uses it, and how much data is in there?
So I can give background on kind of what we're using and what it's been used for in the past. So essentially, the charts repo and Helm had some GCP projects that had buckets for both Helm binaries and for the charts themselves, the tarballs that make up the charts. Out of there, you can pull quite a bit of data from the audit logs and/or download logs of those objects. And so that's the kind of info that Hippie Hacker would like to have access to and kind of be able to troll that data a little bit. The projects that we've been using, there's actually three, one for Helm, one for charts, and then one for chart CI testing, have all been just Google-owned projects. We started them, and they're just kind of growing at this point. I've been one of the owners and probably what I would call the primary at this point, just because I've been mostly accessible at it, but as Hippie Hacker will tell you, maybe not as accessible as I should be. And I would like to move that into a CNCF-owned project or transfer ownership of that project, and then have some more structure around the ownership. Right now, it's just kind of a free-for-all, and any patterns that have been figured out, I'd like to leverage those if possible.
Yeah, see, when you're speaking about project, do you mean the GCP project? Like
yes.
All right. So I get it. Can you please drop me a brief email with that? So I'm fine with that on the technical side. It shouldn't be a big issue. Another possible challenge is how can we figure it out from the legal standpoint, because we originally had an agreement with Google how do we receive all this donation and how can we consume all this stuff for Kubernetes, and for example, all this donation cannot be used for another CNCF projects. So yeah, so we have to figure it out internally, and yeah, that's the way how can I see we can solve it out. I see that Aaron is raising his hand, so.
No, you said what I was going to say, which was just to be clear, this group is about Kubernetes infrastructure, not CNCF infrastructure.
Yeah. I'm responsible for, I'm a person who can help you with that also on the Helm side. So I'm also managing our other CNCF project accounts and so on. So we can sync with you outside of this group on how to transfer all these assets under CNCF. But we have to figure it out if this proposal lands under Kubernetes infrastructure or not.
Awesome. Well, I'll write up everything I know, and I'll send over an email to you here.
Yep, please do it. Thank you.
Hey, Vic, do we still have common testing infrastructure? Like, is Kubernetes still running the CI for Helm?
Yeah, it is.
And are we still doing chart deploys too? Like, is that still all connected up and working?
The CI process, does deploy to our CI cluster. And that's still all working and part of our main flow today.
So I think Google's paying for all of that. We're working to kind of, there are a couple projects that piggyback off of prow.k8s.io that we're actually going to try and divest ourselves of those projects, if at all possible. So we're pretty close to having like a Google open source prow for maybe things like Kubeflow and maybe things like charts, which are open source and we want to fund them, but they're not specifically part of the Kubernetes project, right? But I don't have hard concrete plans there. Just that's kind of where we want to head.
Yeah, loop me in if those get started. I'm happy to represent one of those types of projects and be an early adopter of that with our projects.
Sure. I think the hard line here is like when it comes time to figure out what jobs we're going to migrate over and where what money is going to be spent on what jobs from this group, that's where we'll talk about what's going over and isn't.
Aaron, we're happy to pick up the tab for help if need be.
Yeah, totally. That's fine. Like I said, Google's spending the money on, as far as I know, Google's spending the money on the Helm charts project right now, right?
Yeah. So. And Brandon, did you want me to CC you on that email once I kind of compile the stats on what's going on in those projects and that kind of stuff?
Is Matt involved already? Or
No, I was going to kind of get all the Helm org maintainers once I figured out the right folks, so I can loop them in.
As long as the Helm folks are the Helm maintainers are there, that's fine with me. You can CC me if you want. I don't really care one way or the other, but I want to make sure the Helm folks are involved.
Awesome, we'll do.
Okay, Hippie Hacker, did you get what you want, or are you still?
There's still some things as far as configuration on the on using the Helm charts project. We have audit logs, which seem to have some roll up of about every 30 minutes, but it doesn't allow us to do summary of what. So I could only tell that which charts were downloaded at least once every 30 minutes, and that's most of them. What I need to know is every download and try to also distinguish different IPs and different user agents. I've been able to recreate that in my own org, but we need to do some changes to the logging syncs for what's available for that Helm chart, and I'll probably just work directly with Vic on that, maybe today, if that's possible, or if I can get granted enough privileges to do so myself, that would be great.
Okay, so you don't need us anymore, so that's good. Okay. Audit log, access logging, we just talked about it. Jeff, do you want to talk about DNS and Let's Encrypt? XD? Oh, did he drop off?
He dropped for the other meeting, unfortunately.
Okay.
So I think we'll take this as an action item. And for what it's worth, this was like, I'm trying to go back and look at what we had as AIs last time. So for DNS to be well and truly done, like I feel like there should be graduation criteria or something for the DNS thing. Right now, where I just pointed people to file issues, so I'm curious what the whole workflow will look like with filing an issue. Somebody else is going to have to like write a PR, merge that PR, see the thing deploy, yada, yada, yada. So I feel like at least moving to a more self-service driven workflow where anybody can open up a PR, but only a select few can approve those PRs is maybe the ultimate desired state for DNS. I don't know.
I think that's right, Aaron. I think the YAML that we've got for DNS is not that complicated, so I think anybody could, if they wanted to, add a record. I think also that should be a very, very scant number of times a year that we have to do that. I think the issue that Jeff was facing was we needed to add the random token to the text record for Let's Encrypt to issue certificates, and he was. I asked him to think about whether these were permanent records that we check in every 6 months as we refresh certificates, or whether they would be ephemeral things that we would just give a bot access to change sort of in production without touching through the YAML. I didn't like that. The other option is to find a better way to do certificate refresh, which I think we can do now. We have managed certificates here. So honestly, I think what we should do is switch everything over to use the managed certificates and then just not worry about it anymore.
Well, you don't need text records to do Let's Encrypt anyway.
You need either DNS or you need a URL, right?
You need DNS to work, but it doesn't have to be a text record, right? Like all you need is the DNS, the A record to point to an IP address.
No, I mean it has to do a verification, right?
No, it puts up a token. Like all you need is the DNS to be working. You don't need it. You don't need a text record, as far as I know.
You can use.
There's a challenge. It's either the Acme challenge or the DNS challenge, right? I see James' name popped up.
Yeah, you need the HTTP.
Yeah, it's the Acme challenge if you run their server. So you just need to run their server at your IP address.
So you could use HTTP 01 challenges instead of DNS 01. And
right.
HTTP 01, I think, it just doesn't require updating DNS records. You just need your the domain that's being validated to point at your ingress controller.
That's right. I think in this case, the DNS was what we'd been using because we didn't have the HTTP resolution. Anyway, we don't need to adjudicate it here. I think in the end, we go to manage certificates, which doesn't matter anyway.
Okay. I'm going to take a stab at like fleshing out that umbrella DNS issue with whatever we need as follow-up. Hell, maybe I'll even try writing a KEP and we can have graduation criteria. I don't know. But it sounds like this is one of those things. Maybe I'm missing a couple other things. Okay, the other follow-up item I personally had, and just to kind of touch on Brendan's point about why are we imposing so much process here? Can't we all just get along and pretend like we're a startup? Part of my hesitance with doing that is I have no idea how we're spending our money. If we could get like a lot of transparency on where the money's going and why, then I'm a lot more comfortable being a little looser and a little more flexible. So I think we had talked last time about dumping the billing data into like a BigQuery table. My goal here is to get to the point where we can start each meeting off with Ihor telling us like, hey, this in the past 2 weeks, y'all have spent your money on X, Y, and Z. And then eventually get to the point where those sorts of updates can be more frequent or even self-service rather than having to wait for this meeting to get that information, because that will allow us to adapt and be like, whoa, wait, what are these people doing with that money over there? And we can maybe be a little looser. So that's just my 2 cents on that matter. But so where are we on billing, Tim and Ihor? I think you guys were owning this.
I can billing reports are set up, and they let me actually open the billing dashboard. So the billing reports are set up, and we have them automatically dumped into BigQuery. What is not set up at the moment is Data Studio to easily consume all that stuff and visualize that, but that depends on like what do we want to see there and so on. So at the current moment, I can tell you what are our actual reports. For example, if you have any more specific requests on our billing, you may probably start with a GitHub issue with what specifically we'd like to see there, and I'll work on that. So the current moment, we just have the full dump of all our billing expenses, everyday expenses that are dumped into the BigQuery tables.
So I've never personally played with the Data Studio for billing export. I think, honestly, the first step is somebody, maybe it's you, Ihor, maybe it's somebody else, to just play with it and see what sort of reports are interesting and useful and easy to produce. A report of week by week breakdown per product or something like that would be really interesting. How much do we spend on VMs this week? How much do we spend on network this week? Would be interesting, but I don't really know what questions are answerable by the data set because I've never actually dug into the billing data set.
Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah, I'm also not familiar with Data Studio, unfortunately, but yeah, that could be something to play with.
So yeah, maybe this is better bike shedded in written form, but just so I like am clear, like, does anybody disagree with me on that's the reason we're acting so super formal and we'd be willing to like be a little looser and faster if we had a better idea of where our money is being spent?
No, I agree completely. I want to make sure we have some visibility there before we open the fire hose. We've got now clusters to start moving things over, which is great because it's going to exercise a bunch of different product areas. But I want to know where that money's going before we turn the thing on for real.
Right. Okay. Like off the top of my head, at a minimum, if we're running a bunch of different discrete services like DNS and one day providing a bunch of artifacts and the go.k8s.io redirector, I kind of want to know how much each of those individual services is costing us. And then for people like, again, I think it was Tim and Justin who we gave money to go, or we gave permission to go spin up some alpha clusters and just play around, like how much money has that cost us? And what have we gotten for it? It's not that I want to be a penny pincher about it. I really like spend whatever. I kind of don't care. I just want to make sure we can see that that's what we're doing. because right now we don't.
Agree completely. I think that's the only real objective, is that we have some visibility into it and transparency.
Okay.
Any preferred timeline when you'd like me to set this up?
Last week? No, I mean, honestly, like we'll sit and play with the alpha clusters and test migrate over various services like, you know, GCS Web or the K8s IO redirectors or whatever. We just can't go live with them until one of us makes enough time to sit and play with Data Studio and understand it properly. So if you don't get to it, Ihor, eventually Justin or I or somebody will get to it.
And just to anybody who's watching this recording, if you happen to have experience managing infrastructure on GCP and have access to billing reports and you know how you like it done, please come help us out.
A good one, Aaron. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into all that stuff, and I'll provide some report on the next meeting. So yeah.
Okay. I think we blew through all the items in the open discussion. Maybe we can take a quick look at the project dashboard. And let me share.
So just a quick note from my end, now that DNS is effectively done, there's a couple of to-dos that are relatively low priority, but I'm sort of purposeless at this point. So I'll probably try to help Justin figure out some of the cluster stuff and some of the migration of the existing stuff that's in the clusters.
Right, so that's this one. It's still in progress. This one, automate DNS. When Aaron, you said that you will do a little bit more here, right?
I don't think we can really do the proper automation until we have the cluster up.
Okay. Then billing and reporting, we talked about it just now. So this one is on me. I haven't done that yet. Then create a image promotion process. I think this is still stuck. The KEP has merged, but then we haven't regrouped after the end of the year stuff.
Sure. So now that we're back at the beginning of the year, we can get Linus to come in and give us an update. Oh, that was 9 days ago. Okay.
Right. So I will ping Linus and see if he can come to the next meeting. And if not, we'll see if we can set up an additional meeting.
For what it's worth, Linus came by SIG release and shopped it around there. And everybody was like, yeah, that looks good. I had a question about, gee, it looks like it only takes promotions from GCR repos right now. We had thoughts of maybe what if there was a manifest that pulled down images from any potential Docker registry, not just the GCR ones. Neat, but let's get rolling on the GCR thing first.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll need to put in place whatever the final plan is going to be around the staging areas per project, or however we need to make a decision on that and then implement that.
Right. I think a couple of meetings ago, we were talking about creating GCR repository for people to push their images to, and the promoter can pick it up from there to the official repository. So
yeah, so if that's the way we want to go, let's write down what the plan's going to be, what the convention for how to name those things and how to grant access to whom, and probably those want to be checked in as a YAML file somewhere else with GitHub bots or something, or not GitHub bots, but the GCP bots or somebody automating that creation, etc. I just want to get all the T's crossed and the I's dotted.
Okay, I will take that one on. So I'll call it the intermediate repository for GCR, from where the image promotion takes place. Okay, then.
I was just going to say, for 151, which is the one about automate DNS for Kubernetes assets, we do have a cluster. We could do half of it, which is sort of checking the DNS records, because our cluster is not where I would want it to be the sole source of truth, but for verification, we can do that. And then that's new functionality that we're not going to risk breaking GCS Web or something. Tim, so maybe we could start with that.
You mean like make it do a dry run push of everything and see if it fails or not?
Yeah, I mean, just like check that, well, yes, Yes, check that the thing in the repo matches the records in Google Cloud DNS or wherever we're putting it.
The logs from these bot runs, are they available somewhere, Justin?
The non-existent bot runs that we are proposing, and we can make them available somewhere.
Okay.
It is a good question, which is where should we put those things?
The question is there a reason that we would do this in like a separate new thing that we'd be designing on a cluster for automation as opposed to just making a prow job for it?
Well, we have a sequencing issue. We don't have prow in community-owned space.
Right.
Do we need it in community-owned space just yet to run it? Like it's all going to eventually move to community-owned space when prow jobs do, but I would suggest that we have this very fancy CI automation system all set up, and where it runs probably isn't critical to actually doing the DNS checks and having all the same logging mechanisms and output, like it'd be visible in Kubernetes, it'd be visible in test grid, all that kind of stuff.
It's fair. I don't know how to set up prow, so it's a much bigger step.
If we create an action item, I will reluctantly take something on. I can pick that up and template out a prow job to get that done. It's not difficult as long as we have here's the command line flags that you need to pass to it.
Yeah, it's not the prow. I mean, I can do the job. It's the setting up prow itself that is the tricky one for me personally.
I don't mind going through and setting up the prow stuff if that's an action that we're ready to move forward with. I've done that on several other accounts.
Yeah, I don't think that that's super urgent right now. I'd actually be okay if we didn't do that just yet and actually ran with it manually just to make sure that nothing explodes while humans are paying attention to the script. I mean, I think between Hippie test and the script itself, I think it'll be fine, but I would love to get a little bit of miles on it while humans are paying attention.
Sorry,
Also, with the credentials part of it for prow.
I was typing elsewhere. On getting prow set up in a more easy manner, Justin, you and Eric Veda should connect. We're working on trying to get to a push button experience for standing up the prow.
To be clear, I don't think prow is hard. I just don't have experience with it. I'm not dissing prow. I'm dissing myself. My own.
No, I want a guinea pig.
Oh God. Okay.
You look kind of guinea pig shaped. I don't know.
Okay. Christoph, can I ask you to open an umbrella issue, please, for setting up prow in the CNCF space?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. That's nice. Okay. Yeah, we talked about everything else, and mirroring attestation, we touched on it earlier. I think that's about it. Anybody else have anything else to talk about?
I mean, just since I had mentioned Justin and Tim having access to alpha clusters, how's that going? What's new?
Okay, so so the next thing that I'm going to do is publishing bot, try to run it there. And I got access to all the things that are needed, including the secret key for running the bot. I'm going to try it this week. I was supposed to do it last week, but I was not able to get to it.
And from our end on the cluster infrastructure side, Justin and I have charted a course through the various GCP APIs to find how to create a cluster with minimal access required. We have not scripted that though. So eventually we will want to burn the thing down and start it over from a script, and we will have to put those pieces back together.
Are the notes somewhere public, Tim?
No.
Can you throw them out in a gist or something?
I can. I would just as soon sit down and write the script and then make the script be the documentation.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine too.
So I'll wait until you guys are done with this iteration, and then we'll burn it down and I'll remove all the access and we'll start over.
Okay, sounds good. Because we still have to deal with the renaming. Aaron, that was the last thing left on my...
Right.
Aaron, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I've no idea if I'm on mute or not. So Christoph had mentioned that he wanted to defer renaming all the groups and stuff. if we're going to do that kind of breaking change, maybe consider the use of G Suite for our groups. And there's a proposal out that I think the steering committee needs to take a look at about whether or not we could take our G Suite instance and allow the K8s Infra group to use it for this purpose. There are supposedly all sorts of magical benefits that come when you use G Suite for ACLs like this. So my only ask was like, could we make a breaking rename to the public mailing list so we can call it WG K8s Infra instead of K8s Infra team? The rest I kind of don't care about. We've already renamed the Slack channel. I've renamed all the other assets. It's just the public mailing list. And the effect of that would be that, like, if you reply to that mailing list after the rename, it bounces back. And
yeah, unfortunately, you can't have lists join lists on the public forum, right? You can only do that on G Suites.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine with me.
Okay.
It's not. We are not using it heavily right now.
Right. So I don't have owner or manager level access to that list. If somebody who does wants to grant it to me, I can do the needful, or somebody tell me who I should poke to go do the needful.
I think Ihor had set it up.
Yep. I think I have
both Ihor and Dims should both have access, if I remember. Like, that was one of the very first meetings that we had. We set up that list.
Sweet.
Okay.
Let me double check who is another person who, like, I definitely have an access, but I should not be the single person.
I guess my request would be that Dims and I have access as we are chairs of the working group.
I'll grant you an access.
Right, thanks.
Yeah.
I probably have it. I haven't looked yet.
Ihor as a service.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
I'll grant you permissions, Aaron, and we'll check if Deems has.
Thank you. That's all we had for today. Unless there's anything else, let's wrap up. Give you back 8 minutes. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Happy Wednesday.